how was it possible for the Mongols to create the biggest empire of all times in just 70 years, 1206-1279? In the 13th century, the Mongol Empire began to expand rapidly and succeeded in creating the largest empire in the world. There is no one reason for the success of the Mongols' empire in rapid expansion. It's like most other event in history. Many factors contributed to this. The first factor is brutal pragmatism. While there were many positive aspects of the Mongols that contributed to their great empire, one cannot ignore the main negative aspect that may have been perhaps the most important. The Mongols were pragmatic, brutally so. If they had to wipe out entire cities down to the last child, they did not need to think twice about it. The brutality of the Mongols is unmatched in history, save perhaps Tamerlane, a man who wanted to rebuild the Mongol Empire under his own rule. This brutality it had a threefold effect. First of all, it provided opposing armies with an incentive to surrender and not prolong a war. If the Mongols had to work for a victory, they would make sure that the opposing side suffered. This suffering could come in the form of having your city burnt down or having the entire population of the city killed in creative, painful methods. On some rare occasions, it meant both. Due to this, many armies preferred to surrender after losing the first fight, rather than to prolong the war. The greatest example of this would be the sack of Baghdad. The leader of the Abbasid Caliphate refused to surrender, and the people of this city paid for this resistance. The people of this great city were killed, including the women and children. The agricultural system in place was destroyed that turned the entire region into the desert-like landscape that Baghdad now is. The buildings were razed to the ground. The House of Wisdom, known throughout the world as a meeting place for the great scholars, was destroyed. The books found within, gathered from all over the world, were thrown in the river. According to the historians of the time, the Tigris River ran red and black from the blood of the people and the ink of the books. Baghdad would never again rise to its former glory. Secondly, the brutal nature of the empire prevented rebellions. Most people were too terrified to rebel and declare independence. Everyone saw how cruel the Mongols could be during a conquest. No one wanted to test the limits of this cruelty by rebelling. A few that did choose to rebel and force the Mongol armies to return from their conquest were taught a valuable lesson. Unfortunately for them, they would not survive to pass on this lesson. Thirdly, brutality for the sake of pragmatism. This provided the Mongols with an advantage over all of the other empires. The Mongols were willing to do just about anything. There was no line that they were unwilling to cross. The best example of this would be the fall of the Khwarezmians, a massive Persian empire that ruled large parts of Central and West Asia. The people of this great empire were not killed as a result of the war or to serve as a lesson. They were killed for the sake of pragmatism. The reason for killing so many Persians was simple: to allow the Mongols to go on conquering new lands. The Mongol army could not expand any further because they would face rebellions by the Persians throughout this newly conquered empire. The solution was simple: kill the Khwarezmians. It is believed that almost 9 of the citizens of this once great empire were put to the sword or died as a result of Mongol-caused famines. More than 700,000 people were killed by the Mongols in the city of Merv. Many more are believed to have been killed in the city of Urgench. These are just 2 of the cities of the once great and rich empire that comprised of many more of such cities. Without this brutal pragmatism, the Mongol Empire could not have gone on expanding. So the second factor is Genghis Khan himself. Genghis Khan himself is one of the greatest contributing factors towards the success of his empire. He managed to create a confederation of the nomadic tribes in the steppes of Central Asia that would rival and then surpass that of the Gokturk Khaganate formed under the Ashina clan. This unity provided the empire with a great army. Another thing that set the Mongol Empire apart from the nomadic confederations that preceded them was the vision of Genghis. He had a vision for his empire, and this vision of his would survive even after his death. One also cannot forget that the man was a military genius and great administrator. The only other nomad to rival his accomplishments may be Baman Khan himself. Without Genghis Khan to unite the tribes and lead them, there would have been no empire. The third factor is the Mongol army. The image of the Mongol army in many people's minds seems to be one of a large, undisciplined horde. However, this could not be further from the truth. The Mongol army was extremely well disciplined and well organized. The soldiers were divided into groups of 10 called Arban. These further made up larger groups such as Zunin, 100 men, Minghan, 1,000 men, and Tumen, 2,000 men. the men could not change their arbans. The entire arban would be put to death if even one man from the group deserted. Each arban consisted to 6 light armored horse archers and 4 heavily armored lancers. These soldiers would practice their skills. Each group was fairly independent enough so as to allow creative tactics to work without being too highly dependent on a central command. The tactics of the Mongols gave them an advantage over their opponents. The nomadic style of horse archers were new to most other armies, and most were unable to cope. The nomadic archers could harass their opponents' camps throughout the night, preventing them to getting any sleep. Perhaps the tactic that the Mongols are best known for is the feigned retreat. They would use it to draw out the enemy, tire them out, and then move in for the kill. Lastly, the mobility of this army could not be matched by any other. Each man was responsible for 3-4 horses. This way, when one was tired, the soldier could change horses and continue. Such tactics allowed the Mongol army mobility that their enemies could not even imagine. In some campaigns, the Mongol army could cover 100 miles a day. Fourth factor is tolerance. For such a brutal empire, one would expect it to be very intolerant to others' beliefs. This was not so. The Mongol Empire was surprisingly tolerant of all religions and ethnicity. This meant that the subjects of the Great Khan had less of a reason to rebel or oppose him. For a common man, being under this new empire made no difference. He could go on living his life according to his beliefs as he did under the previous empire. The fifth factor is willingness to adapt. The Mongols were willing to adapt to changes. Kublai changed the location of the capital from Karakorum in Mongolia to Khanbalik in China. He also filled his court with people from all parts of the empire. Not only were the Mongols willing to adapt, they would also learn from the conquered people. From the Uyghurs, they learned a script to write the Mongolian language in. From the Chinese, they learned to use the gunpowder and flaming arrows. The siege engineers for military campaigns would be brought in from China and Persia. This willingness to adapt and learn would help improve the army with each victory.